I always tell people, if you're afraid of losing muscle, because a lot of bodybuilders always say, I don't do aerobics because I'm afraid of losing muscle. Simple. Take some amino acids about an hour before you train. Your body will not touch your muscle. They'll burn up the amino acids. You don't care about them anyway. You just want to preserve your muscle. So,
and would you take that in? Would you have your amino acids within some kind of protein powders then, or would you just have separate?
Well, they sell separate. Like I say, some of these newer supplements, they're nothing more than essential amino acids. That's all they are. So you could take that. You could take it in a powder or a tablet form, or you could take a regular whole protein. You're automatically getting, whey is loaded. Whey protein is loaded with essential. It's 16% branched chain amino acids. It's loaded with amino acids. So it's up to you either way. My personal feeling is that if you're consuming enough dietary protein, and what I mean by that, I'll give you a figure. Somebody who wants to gain muscle for whatever purpose should be consuming 1.2 to it's 1.2 to 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. 2.2 kilogram. I'm sorry.
A pound.
2.2. Yeah, that's about a pound. A gram of muscle per pound of body weight. The 2.2 figure.
Right.
So that's the requirements, say, for gaining muscle. So where you get it is irrelevant. In other words, you can get it from food. But my point is that if you're eating enough, if you're getting that range of protein, there's no need for really supplemental protein or supplemental amino acids. I mean, because the excess protein, the idea that there's another myth that you can only absorb a limited amount of protein. And that's a confusion, because what they found is when it comes to muscle protein synthesis, there's a limit. About 30 grams in men under 40, that maximizes muscle protein synthesis at one sitting, at one meal. If you're older, because of anabolic resistance, you have to take a little more, maybe 40 to 50 grams. Now, does that mean that all the other protein is wasted? No, it's used for other things. Skin, hair, nails, blood, all internal organs, right? But people have taken this to say that you could, and I believed this for years myself, that you could only absorb 30 grams of protein a meal. There's no limit to how much protein there is no limit. You can absorb any amount of protein, but the limit is on how much will be used for muscle protein synthesis.
Okay.
That's where the confusion lies.
And have you seen any particular proteins that, because we've done a few episodes on protein itself, but have you seen any that are particularly good, efficient, effective, and don't have a lot of junk in, or do you not sort of recommend things in that level of detail?
That's a very good question, because there's a real problem with protein supplements. The problem with protein supplements is, it's an interesting story, because whey started out as a byproduct of cheese manufacturing. You have two major proteins in milk. One of them is whey, which is 20% of milk protein, and the other 80% is casein, right? Now, in the manufacture of cheese, whey was considered a waste product, and they dump it in rivers and stuff. It's just thrown away. And then some scientists along the way, I don't know who, looked at the amino acid composition of whey, and he said, whoa, wait a minute. This stuff is really good. It's loaded with essential amino acids and all this. So a guy, I can't remember his name, this guy in the 30s, actually whey goes way back to the 1890s, Eugene Sandow, which is the archetypical bodybuilder. He was literally the first bodybuilder. He actually endorsed a product that was made from whey. They didn't know the nutritional product. Nobody knew what whey did. They just kind of took it out of the air, and I'll tell you what, because it was dirt cheap. It was highly profitable. And he sold, I don't know whether it was a cracker or something, but it was based on whey, and whey was like quarter of a penny. It was so cheap, so they could make a profit. Later on, his name was Schiff, Eugene Schiff. A supplement company was named. He started a supplement company later on called Schiff Supplements, which Joe Weider bought years later. He was the first guy to come out with a commercial whey product, but it was green. It was horrible tasting. It made you vomit. You could not, and he abandoned it. Whey didn't become popular until the early 90s, when they started to process whey in such a way, that it became very tasty. There was one called Designer Protein, which became a huge seller. It was very tasty. It was a whey protein. Now, What happened was whey protein originally wasn't that expensive because it was there was an abundance of it. As whey, just like anything else, supply and demand, the law of economics, as something becomes more popular, the price goes up. See, so in the last couple of years, they dramatically increased the price of raw whey material. So what the protein companies that sell whey, they had to make a choice to buy this increased wholesale cost of whey. They would have had to raise the cost of their products almost to the point where it's unaffordable. I mean, $100 a can, nobody's going to buy that. So they had to come up with a plan. They said, how could we still sell the whey, keep the price reasonable, and still make our profits? So what they decided to do was they added amino acids to the whey protein. Now, they measure the protein content of, let's say, a whey product by the nitrogen content. In other words, and amino acids, of course, that's what makes protein unique, that it contains nitrogen. Carbohydrates and fats do not. Now, by adding amino acids, you increase the nitrogen content of the protein. What does that mean in practical terms? You could sell a protein that where on the label, it says each scoop contains, let's say a whey protein, each scoop contains 25 grams of protein. But the fact that it's spiked is the term, or there's another term for it. I think amino acid spiking is a common term, where they add these cheap amino acids, but it increases the nitrogen value. So the nitrogen content is still equal to 25 grams of protein, but what you're actually getting is 12 grams of protein because it's not the full amount. This allows them to put in actual less whey, therefore they could, it accounts for the greater cost they're paying for the wholesale, and they could still make their profits, but the consumer is being screwed because he's paying the same price he paid before, but for half the amount of actual whey. So the point is, what I would tell consumers is if you're considering buying, let's say, a whey protein, do not buy anything that, because they're so devious, they list the added amino acids as a feature. It'll say on the label, whey protein with added glutamine, added taurine, and then, a guy who doesn't know about nutrition will say, wow, this is not just whey, it has all these extra amino acids. They don't realize they're adding the amino acids, they're ripping you off. So my point is, there are whey products that don't contain amino acids. Those do contain the full amount. They're a little more expensive, they are, because of the wholesale price of whey. So, look for if you're gonna buy a whey protein isolate with no added amino acids. Otherwise you're ripping yourself off.